Hey guys, Basil with Grayson Hobby, and today we're going to show you how to build a 3-inch FPV drone in under 1 hour.
Yeah, so we get messages all the time about people asking, do you have a kit? Do you have a kit? I want a pre-built kit. I don't want all the components. Don't give me a list. Give me a kit. Well, guess what, guys? We have one for you. It's really easy to build as far as kits go. I can't believe how fast it was to build in comparison to some other quads. So this is definitely one I recommend for those of you that want to try to start building and programming on your own.
So this build, believe it or not, has as little as 5 solder points or as many as 6.
I mean, you could go higher, but as far as the actual build, yeah, 5 to 6 solder points, and that's it.
So part 1 is going to be strictly the build. We're going to take it from the box of parts to what you see in your hand.
Yeah.
And part 2 will be later, which will be tuning it, configure it, and everything else.
Literally, this was built with a 1.5 millimeter Allen wrench. I used my thumb to secure the little hex nuts on there.
So first off, you're going to have your frames. It's a 3-inch frame. It is a 2.5 millimeter carbon fiber frame. Attached to the frame will be the 4 motors. These are the Zing motors. These are our 1104 4200 kV motors. Attached to the motors, we're going to have the props. This is a 4-in-1 ESC. It's a 15 amp, and included with the 4-in-1, you have your XT30, and then you have your capacitor. That attaches to your flight controller. This is a F4 flight controller. After that would be your VTX. This is a 200 milliwatt VTX with the IPX connector. And this also comes with the grommets. All the hardware, screws, all that good stuff. And our TPU canopy. Then what is FPV without a camera? This is the Caddx EOS V2 Turbo.
Hard to judge the actual size depending on, everybody's hands are different sizes. But the actual length of this quad we got from motor shaft to motor shaft is about 100 millimeters, yeah. So 10 centimeters. The width of this guy, because it's a stretch X, is going to be less, about 90 millimeters. And then diagonally should be that 136. Let's see, 130. So for those of you asking without battery weight, in case you're running a different battery, the quad itself weighs 66 grams. Wow.
That's all ready to go.
That's like, man, we had whoops that weighed more than that, I think. But what you're gonna need is 16 of the M2x5 screws. Now the motors did come with screws too. You're not gonna use those. The kit came with a separate bag with all the hardware for it. Okay. So you're just gonna need to rally up a bunch of the screws here.
Wait, let's give a measurement on these guys.
M2, 5 millimeter long. Because these already have the Loctite pre-applied to them. All right, so basically, just gonna go in and long process of screwing in motors.
So each motor gets how many screws?
Well, up to 4. I don't know if you really wanted to. I guess you could run less, but
well, I mean,
some people run 3.
So I've seen some quads have 3, some quads have 4. So this one is designed to have how many?
4.
4. All right. All right. So all 4 motors are on. What's the next step?
Well, before we put the stack on, we really need to solder up the receiver and the battery leads.
Okay. So I say CrossFire, and what do you say?
If that's what you want to do.
Let's do it.
We're gonna add a CrossFire receiver. This is not included, but we are gonna add it. Nice thing about the particular manual came with, it tells you exactly how to wire it up right here.
Okay.
Put a little bit of flux on the leads. Gonna go ahead and tin said leads. Nice and tin. So there is a plus and a minus, well, an X and a dash. Yeah, they did it sideways, that's funny. So you got a plus and minus. Let's just verify with the chart here. The polarity on this one is plus is on this side, which is marked with the X or the plus sideways, and then the minus. So okay, so they are right. And these are pretty easy to solder if you don't move anything. Hold on, there.
All right, next step.
All right, so next step, we're gonna put the capacitor on.
Okay, so
on this particular build, I'm gonna do it a little far out. If you look at the frame, the way it sits, Yeah, there's going to be a post right there, so we don't have a lot of room in between. So we're going to put it fairly close up.
Okay.
To it.
So is there polarity on the capacitor?
Yeah, it's minus.
Okay. All right, what are you doing there? You're cutting.
I'm just kind of trimming it to where I think it should be. You don't want to go too short.
Okay.
So it's got breathing room. So I would have gone a little longer actually.
All right. So you basically just cut the capacitor.
Yeah. Cut the leads because I'm going to solder it in there. Put a little flux on it. Tin it a little bit.
Just gives you the room to work with, basically. Right?
Yeah.
So it's real hard to do one soldered wire onto another. At least I have trouble with that sometimes.
So now our capacitor is soldered on. Right there. The bags have two different size grommets in them. One is 6.6 millimeters tall, one's 5.6.
We're hard to tell the difference.
If you look at them, not so bad. These are symmetrical. The smaller ones are symmetrical, and the taller ones are asymmetrical.
Yes. Okay, so now you're taking the larger of the grommets and putting on the bottom of the ESC, right?
Yeah, and that's the fun part.
It goes all the way through.
Yeah, you just work it in.
Yeah. So you want to wait till you get that in so you can see it? Okay, so we have the grommets on.
Yeah.
Pain in the neck to put on, right?
Takes a little bit of work.
Yeah.
It's probably the hardest part of the build.
So we have the long ones, 6.5?
Yeah, so you're going to have the longer side, shorter side. The longer side, shorter side. The longer side being the bottoms. And then on the very top stack that's symmetrical, they're both same side short.
And the top stack, so we have...
So you got the 5.6, 6.6, and 6.6.
So we have the ESCs,
yeah,
flight controller,
yeah,
and the VTX.
Little spacers, these little shipping things that just keep the pins from getting damaged.
Okay.
Pull it off, and then you got to align it.
Oh.
Oop. Plug it in.
Okay. So you have to make sure you align them perfectly.
Yeah, if you put them off, you're gonna fry stuff.
Well,
plus you can't mount it like that.
I've had stuff power on, but you just act weird when it wasn't.
Yeah. So there's the stack right there. Again, all you're missing is soldering. We soldered on this lead, but all you're missing solder-wise is the actual receiver. So it's pretty nice, pretty easy.
Okay, solder on the receiver, boy.
So.
Boy, I said boy.
I'm gonna go ahead and pull the VTX back off that I had there. That way we have access to the pins. I'm gonna leave the flight controller on here. Just take note that you don't want to melt the wire pins there, but it might. I think it's just gonna hold it a little bit better for me to solder. So next thing I need is a receiver, and we opted for the CrossFire on this one because it's just a couple more wires to solder. You know, why make it easy?
Anyone could solder on an S-Bus receiver.
I mean, anyone that's name is not Basil, but yeah.
So what's first thing first with your?
We're gonna solder up this thing.
Oh,
I'm gonna go ahead and tin it, yeah.
Fluxing, and just so you know, Will is referencing the
little chart
that came with.
Because I am not much of a CrossFire person, but I have a feeling that someone named Basil will be taking this quad once it's complete. So we're gonna go ahead and put CrossFire on it because he's big and fancy like that.
Pretty good there without any kind of helping hand.
Yeah, had to solder a lot, so. Alright, so we got the wires there. I am going to go down and tin what I need on the flight controller just so it's a little easier. And then I'll have to strip the wire to the length I feel like I need, then we'll have to line that up. Then we got a 5-volt. And guys, remember these are small. Don't do what I just did and bridge them. Don't need a lot of solder on that.
So this is a tough build, right? This is the hardest part.
Yeah, I mean, this is probably going to be the hardest part, yeah.
So just use minimal solder and take your time. And what happens if you bridge some? What do you do? How do you fix it?
I mean, like what I did there. Here, I'll just go ahead and bridge these two.
Okay, so what happens if you bridge?
So if I bridge these two, like I just did here to show you, literally just take a clean iron with no solder on it.
Okay.
And
just kind of pick it away until it kind of sucks off, right?
Yeah. Alright, so I just tinned. So, and I'm just gonna eyeball this roughly what I need for length of the wire.
So when you say length of wire, you're just gonna measure the receiver wire.
Yeah, so we're not gonna need much at all if you look at that, even if it's the backer.
Alright, so what did you cut?
Just for example, I just cut roughly 65 millimeters worth of wire. Doesn't exactly have to be that, but probably over 50 is better for this particular build.
So really, that's gonna just
because it'll give you the ability to access stuff later.
So that's gonna impact how far the canopy can come off, basically. So as long as it can get over to the side like that, you're pretty much good.
Yeah, because you can always twist up the wire and put it in there. All right, now that I cut all my wires, I'm gonna tin them. And guys, when you cut these are silicone wire. They're not gonna like shrink up when you put heat on them. You really don't need but a couple millimeters. You know, basically the length of the pad at best there. On this particular build, I'm gonna put the wires inwards because we have the speed control there. So I think it just looks a little cleaner and I can always run it elsewhere. So the first one is ground.
Again, refer to your manual or the chart. So if I could make one tip and suggestion, I would definitely take that ESC off for those who are not good at soldering, because I could see myself, and along with many others, smashing that plastic.
If you have something to hold it, great. Otherwise, yeah, just don't melt the connector. That would not be good because it'd be kind of hard to plug in your motor otherwise. Next one is the third one in, so it's pretty much just in line. That's not bad, but it does skip after the ground, positive, empty, and then the next one there, and then the last one here. And there is like buzzer pads and stuff like that. If you want to add it later on here, you can do that.
So now you're just cleaning up the wires, right?
Yeah, this will kind of let it tuck in there. Yeah.
So that's basically the whole electronic stack right there.
Yeah. So motor 1 is opposite of the power leads, 2, 3, and 4. So 1 is back right.
So what does that matter?
So when you put it together, you want the power lead out to the left side.
Okay. So which is motor 1, 2, 3, 4 in the quad? It's facing forward.
Front is facing forward.
Yep.
If that's the front of the quad right here. Motor 1, motor 2, motor 3, and motor 4. So based off the flight control or the speed control already has preset pinouts. You want to make sure the wire lead's going to come out the left side for the speed control for the battery lead. The reason being is that's going to give it the proper orientation.
Okay, so you have to plug in motor 1 into the motor 1 slot, basically.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's up next?
The next step is taking 4 of the 2x23s, aka the super long screws that come with it.
The only 4 that come in it, right?
Yeah, I think it comes with 5. But you're gonna just put those in through the flight stack, like so.
Okay. All 4 goes through, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
All 4 goes through, and then you're gonna use an M2 nut at the top to secure it.
And there's only one nut, so these are the little clear things you see floating around?
Yeah.
Now, how tight should you make that? You don't want to use an impact wrench, right? Is that what I'm
no, you just go till it, literally, boop.
Okay. So, nice and snug. Is there a torque?
Well, they're soft mounted, so if you over tighten, you run the risk of putting, you don't want to over tighten and put the ESC touching the carbon and all that. You just literally are going, basically where you see the height is right there, you're just putting the set screw on to where it stops, makes contact, and then a little extra.
Yeah, if you put it too tight, it defeats the purpose of having those rubber dampers, because then they're just
it's not soft mounted anymore. That there, we're gonna just plug in the, go ahead and plug in the motors.
Okay. And
you'll see there's a side without the wires, little pins exposed, and the side with. The side with the little single bump is gonna go towards the center of the flight control.
So again, let me guess, 1 goes to 1.
Yeah. You definitely don't want these wires into the prop, so you want them to run low. So you'll probably want to put a zip tie or something like that if you have it. Doesn't come with any, but I'm sure you probably can get some.
Yeah, so that's looking like a quad almost.
Yeah.
All right, so what's next?
Mounting the camera, I would say. Let's go ahead and mount the camera.
Okay.
And Caddx camera comes with it. Just slide it in here. And there's going to be 2 super short screws I saw earlier. It's the shortest screws that come with it. There's actually 3 or 4. It comes with 2 extras. So it's nice they're including extra hardware.
So this is going to be the really small screw.
Yeah, this is the short one.
So while you're in there, is this adjustable?
Yeah, depending on where you tighten it down. It's TPU, Canopy. So basically you get it to where you want and then snug it back down to hold. Otherwise, you don't want it too loose to where it's going to bump around and hit something. but you don't need to over tighten it again. You just go towards pretty snug. There's that. Now this camera is going to plug in to the flight controller in the front, which is nice. So there's not much there. This spot, like the CrossFire for example, does fit in here. Actually really nice. So you don't have to do anything crazy with that. I guess really if you had an Immortal T, you can do the 2 antennas because it does come with the mounts, but we just have the single antenna on this particular one. Last like hardware really to mount is the standoff. They're gonna use the 2x7 for strength, so they're gonna use the longer of the M2 screws. All right, so really the next thing here is I guess shrink tubing the receiver in this case, which is not part of the build necessarily, but in this case we do need, I like to put the shrink tube on just to secure that connector because you don't want the antenna coming off while you're flying. Shrink this guy. Next step is mounting it, and I'm gonna put the bind button down. Let's see if I can tuck these wires. Oh, even better.
Hey, yeah. You don't need bind button now.
Oh. And then the camera plugs into the front. All right, and I'm always in a habit of leaving the antennas on the VTX in case I, for some reason, decide to power this up, etc. In order to mount it, you do actually have to pop it back off, or have not installed it yet, and then run it through here. And once it's through, then you can pop the connector back on. Now, just don't ever power your VTX up without that put on, otherwise you will burn it up.
Okay, so it goes through the bare end, the connector first, through the canopy into the flight controller.
I ran the active aerial and the secondary aerial out either side. Those of you that are CrossFire fanatics and know your stuff with CrossFire, I don't use CrossFire, so feel free to comment below if it's not what you're supposed to do, if you're supposed to run them next to each other. I don't know, I don't run CrossFire. If you guys want to buy me one, feel free. Otherwise I'll be running my jumper radio for a while.
So now what, are you just putting the antenna?
So, yeah, these are just covers. I'm just running these on.
Oh, cool, look at that. So those are the little plastic little...
Yeah, it came with little tubes. Yeah. I'm just gonna go ahead and use them since it came with them. Wires and wires and wires. Making use of this TPU body as much as possible.
So now you're going through the same spot where the receiver's mounted.
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah, we're just gonna run it through there. Again, I'm trying to use as little extra like shrink tube or anything like that as possible. Keep this a nice little light, clean build here for you guys. So I need 3 M2x7s and 2 M2 nuts. So the first things first, I'm gonna do the back side. I think it might hold it a little easier. And then you're gonna run the 2x7 through the top in the front. This was a stupid fast build, by the way.
That was really build. I would expect this to be like a 12-part build video.
Yeah, what happened to the days of that? Oh, either use tape or something to secure it is gonna be a good idea in the long run.
Doesn't go with the kit, but probably not optional. I would recommend, highly recommend, securing those wires down.
Tape works every bit as fine if you have any tape.
A lot of kits come with tape. A lot of kits come with tape. All right, so real quick, you're not putting around the whole entire arm.
No, just putting.
You're just putting through one little arm. Is there a reason why?
Because I wanted to.
Because you wanted to. Okay.
I mean, if you do it around here, it's just going to slide up on you, so you might as well do it on the one arm. Yeah.
All right, so all of them are on there.
Yeah, so basically, I have these still. They're loose enough you can slide them back and forth. That way, if it does bend a frame or like that, it's not pulling on the wires. But I ran them back to where it kind of keeps them clean. And that's pretty much a whole quad, other than the props. Wow. Wow. And this just goes through. If it's a little tight, you may have over tightened your board a little bit.
But it just slides right through. It work a little bit through it, right?
Yeah, it had to work a little bit because I have these fairly tight. Now, if I loosen those up and put that through and then tighten it up, it'd be fine. And that's a little grippy, yeah. So that's like literally like the last step there is this little grip.
Right, officially done. All right, wait a minute.
And you'll see here there's a ton of extra hardware.
Yep.
Between that and there. I'm sure some of these might end up being for the props. We will get to that later when we finish the setup and all that. That'll be the last step. If you jump ahead and put screws through your motor, your fault. I'm gonna go ahead and for the time being, now these, if you're running Immortal T antennas, this is the little mounts that would go on here to where you can mount your Immortal T. So you'd put those under the nuts. That's why they're a little long. So you can mount your Immortal T.
Crossfire antenna. Basically.
Crossfire antenna.
Yeah.
If you don't do the style we did.
Yeah. Or if you're running
So that's what those are. So they include those, which is nice because a lot of places make you buy them separately. Extra rubber mount, lock nuts, rubber grommets, short screws, long screws, medium screws.
Save that. If you're flying in your quad one day, you do inspection, because everyone inspects their quad before they fly, right? Well,
no.
You'll notice maybe you have a motor or a screw loose. Maybe one of these is loose. Maybe one's missing. So that's where that comes into.
Okay, so as far as the build goes, pretty straightforward. The screws, make sure when you put in the screws in the bottom, there are wires there. Make sure you don't run any screws into the wires. One of the ones I put in, I kind of had to keep a close eye on it because it looked like it was very close to the screws. If that's the case, put a washer or something underneath it, or cut down a screw. Might be a good idea. You just don't want to put screws into the motors and make them ground to the frame.
Capacitor?
The capacitor itself, if you want a little more wiggle room, depending on how you want to mount the capacitor, in the video I believe we used roughly
5 or 6 millimeters.
Roughly, yeah, it was under 10 millimeters of the wire, the actual wire of the capacitor length. If you want to go a little more, it gives you a little more wiggle room to move the capacitor around. Because the way the antenna is positioned in all this, the antenna guard or cover, it kind of protects that capacitor. That's why I did it just straight out. You may want to keep it as low profile as you can though, because remember the USB is right above it. If you're using a USB cord with a really fat connector, you'll probably want to run the capacitor wires longer, or even solder some actual wire to it and run it elsewhere.
I think that's it. I mean, there's really no tips other than
that's really it, guys. This thing is a very quick, easy build.
He actually likes it, so when he likes something, you know it's good.
Yeah, I kind of wish I would have put a free sky in this so I could take it home and not him, but